What's up, everybody? Episode 7, baseball as intended. We're back. We got a WBC week 1 recap. Two of the pools have already been decided, Pool A, Pool B. We got Pool C, Pool D going on. We're going to go over everything that's happened. We've had some interesting stuff, some things we expected, some things we didn't. Chaos in Pool A. Yeyo, how you feeling?
Can you say a little bit about my situation before
Okay.
I start
So
talking?
So you might think Yayo's sick with the worst sickness ever by the sound of his voice, but Yayo had the pleasure. You were down in Miami for WBC. You caught some Puerto Rico action, 2 games. How was it? Tell us a little bit about that, man. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, so I went to Puerto Rico, Nicaragua. That was what Saturday. That was electric. Puerto Rico ended up winning that one 9-1. It felt like it was when you're going into the stadium. It felt like Puerto Rico fans were like 90% of them, and then
Yeah.
Nicaragua hit that home run to tie the game in like the fourth inning, and it was like whoa, like so loud. And then that's when it felt like that kind of woke up Team Puerto Rico, and then they started obviously Nicaragua were making defensive plays, and Puerto
Right.
Rico started taking advantage of that. But then you saw like electricity, like just the vibe, everything. It was insane, amazing. That was a kind of like a game that you expected Puerto Rico to win, and they had to win, and they did.
Hmm.
For the Venezuela game, the atmosphere is just, and I was trying to explain this to you in better terms. I said, like, it's not playoff atmosphere. It's not, probably not even World Series atmosphere. It's something different. It's like you have, it was a packed house in Miami, which they haven't seen anything like that since 2017 in the World Baseball Classic. The Marlins would not be able to, put 40,000 people there. But you see like the rivalry, but at the same time, amazing. It was a party. Puerto Rico was down 9-1. Obviously, they allowed 7 in the first 2 runs or in the first 2 innings. And it became a Puerto Rico party. Like people started still partying, having fun. Venezuela had this chant of like ponche. Like every time somebody had 2 strikes, they started ponche, like strike him out, strike him out. Then later, the Puerto Rican crowd started doing ponche, ponche just like them when Puerto Rico had the 2 strikes. So it was kind of like a back and forth between the fan bases as well. Like it was just absolutely insane. Obviously, you would have loved for Puerto Rico to come out on top. But Venezuela is just stacked, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. But just an unreal experience. Unreal experience. I wish the WBC was like every 20 months or so instead of.
Well, I remember texting you because we were texting before you went to the game and you got there. I was watching Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, and I remember the sound on the TV. I was like, they're pumping this noise. I was like, there's no way. I was like, I know there's a lot of Puerto Rican fans there. People are excited. And I texted you. I was like, it sounds loud as hell right now. Is it loud? And you were like, yeah, it's nuts because it was awesome. And like you said, that game, I mean, I think everyone expected Puerto Rico to win, but Nicaragua kind of hung around. They didn't look necessarily completely overmatched. Like you could get into that game. It wasn't just a formality, which I think was awesome, you know?
Yeah, and I think to the sound level, I remember in that big inning, I think it was the fifth when Puerto Rico scored like 5. I was with a friend of mine, Reb, and he was telling me something, and I was like, I cannot hear you. Like literally, you're literally within reach, and I cannot hear what you're saying. It was that loud, and like it's something that you have to experience in order to understand. Because some people would say like, oh, you're just making it up or you're exaggerating. No, it's crazy. But you're right. Nicaragua hung around. They hung around in the Israel game as well, right? Like I was like, it's tied at 1. I don't want to get to a point where Jonathan Loaiza got come out of that bullpen and Team Puerto Rico's offense is not great, So it was kind of nerve wracking for a little bit, and then obviously good things started happening.
Oh, the Puerto Ricans came through as we expected them to,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to go back to Miami and get your voice because I think you forgot it. You left
Well,
it down there.
I left it there in the Puerto Rico Nicaragua game. It was gone after the Javi Baez diving played up the middle. It was gone second inning. That was it.
Hey, that's what it's for. So exceeded your expectations or lived up to, would you say?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to been to a few WBC games since the
Yeah, so
first,
you knew.
And I kind of had but it's just so it doesn't get old, right? Like I've been to Puerto Rico games in Puerto Rico for the WBC, and it was right there with it, even though it was Miami, but it was right there with it. It was awesome. It was just unreal.
Well, we're filming. It's Monday right now because you got back today. Hardest working podcasters in the business. You got back today, so we got a couple games going on right now. It's Monday about 7 Eastern. Let's take a look at what's gone on already. So, like we said, Pool A, Pool B have already been decided. We got the standings right there, the basically up to the minute right now. Pool A was bananas. And I think a lot of people maybe missed a little bit of that because depending on where you're at, those games were starting at 11 p.m. or 6 a.m., which is tough. I know I was tired for work a lot because I'm following Cuba, but everybody finished 2-2, which I remember people saying at the beginning, oh, the tiebreak rules are really weird, but don't worry about it. That only happens if everyone finishes 2-2. Well, that's exactly what happened. Netherlands started 2-0, Cuba started 0-2, and somehow everything became a wash. What'd you take away from Pool A, Yayo? What surprised you? What didn't surprise you? Just what were your takeaways?
So a couple of things. I know both of us picked Netherlands and Cuba to advance. Netherlands not advancing, even though they had again 2-2. They beat Cuba. They won the group, the pool winners. So bad for them. But that was a surprise because I had them a favorite at that on that group. We knew Italy. We talked about Italy being kind of sneaky good, and they were able to advance. Love that Panama got a win or two. Good for Panama baseball there. Chinese Taipei. These games were playing. In Taiwan, it was home game for them, and it was loud, and it was crazy, and it was fun. But yeah, biggest surprise was probably for me, Netherlands not making it out of the group. Well, there goes the voice. Not making it out of the group, but happy for Cuba. And I think I tweeted this out the other day how Cuba lost their first two games, and I think that's probably the biggest surprise that they lost their first two games. One of them was against Netherlands, I think the other one against Panama. And they still won the pool. Like, that has to be a first.
Yeah. Yeah, and it started to, I remember seeing kind of that last day of games, once everyone realized, like, it might be this weird scenario. I remember watching Cuba. Cuba was up, I think it was 7-0 or 7-1, and then they gave up a run in the ninth. And I'm like, well, they're going to win this game, but I'm not good enough at math to figure out how much that run they gave up just mattered. I was very happy, obviously. Cuba, I feel like they're in a decent place going forward in the sense, and we talked about this earlier, their pitching was pretty good the whole way through. They weren't, their pitching was doing just fine. Their offense was really stagnant the first two games and then came alive. So if you're them, you're probably saying, okay, we're in a good spot. Our hitting is coming around, advancing to the next round. I think they have a pretty, I don't think there's any easy paths, but you got to like where you're at. If you're Cuba, Italy, they surprised some people. I think not shocked. We said it. I saw someone say Italy should just be renamed the team from New Jersey, the Italians from New Jersey, because that's pretty much what they got, a bunch of guys. But they played well. They got guys with major league experience. They got a lot of guys with minor league experience. They know how to play baseball. They've been in systems before. And good for them. I think it's a feel-good story, to be honest with you. Like you said, it's very weird that Netherlands got left out. But it's hard to look back at this group and say you made the wrong pick because you can just say, well, everyone finished 2-2.
Yeah.
But
we always talk about surprises, and there were bigger ones, right? But nothing here can shock you, right? We knew that Cuba, Netherlands, they were close 1 and 2.
Yep.
We both have Italy third. So that's the thing. Every game is so important. And if you lose one game, it feels like it's just, again, every game is too important. And you're facing.
It fefeels like every game's an elimination game after that. Yeah.
Yes. So, again, crazy that every team won two. It's that every team went 2-2. I don't think I've ever seen that. But happy for Cuba, happy for the Italy as well. We talk about Mike Piazza being the manager there. He's gonna lead them, and they're gonna have a little bit of a tough game. which I think it would be a nice transition into Pool B because they will face the winners of Pool B, and it's Japan. And Japan, everybody had them at the, I think, third best team after, behind DR and US, at least the betting odds. Um,
Yep.
Betting odds might be a little different for the WBC because not everybody knows a lot about Japan players and Japanese players in the roster, but now a lot of people do. And their pitching staff is the best out there, at least starting wise. It's unreal. Shohei Otani is Shohei Otani. I love what I've seen from Yoshida as a Red Sox fan.
Yes.
I'm happy with that. They obviously dominated the pool, and there was no surprise there. Everybody had them winning the pool. Australia came in second with the 3-1 record. We got Korea 2-2, Czech Republic 1-3, and then China 0-4. No surprise there with the China part as
No.
well. Happy for the Czech Republic guys. Like we've seen, like there were plumbers and electricians, and like they won a World
Yes.
Baseball Classic game. One of them struck out Shohei Otani. Like that's like memories that will last a lifetime.
Yeah, that guy's sitting at the bar for the rest of his life. And, every time he talks to someone, he's introducing himself as the guy who struck out Shohei, as he should.
I
I would
too.
never shut up about it. The thing about Japan, and it's no surprise, and I think going forward, you have to beat Japan. Japan does not have off days, which is very, very weird in baseball. I mean, they went 4-1, right? We'll get to Group C and Group
4-0,
D, or
yep.
Pool C and Pool D. 4-0, yeah. And some of these teams that were the favorites have already dropped games, right? You look at Italy and the Netherlands, who we thought were the team. They lost 2 games each. Japan just does not have bad days in baseball. They are so consistent. Their pitchers are going to come out and pitch well, and they're going to hit some bombs. And then along with that, they're going to play fundamental baseball. It's a little bit scary. I mean, it's not a surprise. I'm not acting surprised, but every time you see them play as a team, you're like, yeah, I forgot a little bit how they look so dominant at times.
And I think that's the reason why they've finished top 3 or made it to the semifinals in every single World Baseball Classic, right? Now, as you know, I'll play devil's advocate. They did have the easiest, probably, or on paper, the easiest group, right, for me. But they did what they were supposed to do, right? Right now, they will have a favorable matchup against the Italians. Anything can happen, right? But they're a win away from the semifinals again. And, that's what they do. This is what they do. And in these kinds of tournaments, that's what happens. Like, you have to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. And that's exactly what Japan does every single time. Kind of surprised that Australia went 3-1 and are in over Korea. I was expecting Korea to be that second team, but I'll take the surprise.
Yeah, I was expecting it too. And then I watched Australia. I mean, they looked pretty good.
Yeah.
They could hit a little bit. They looked like a good team. But again, these are small sample sizes, right? It's the same thing that we say in a short series in baseball. When you're talking about the wild card series, divisional series, you lose that one game and it changes everything. Do I think if they do this same group again, does it end this way every time? No. Things change. I mean, Japan probably finishes first every single time, but the rest of it, you never know. But it's interesting. And I mean, we'll get into kind of the matchups that have developed from this going forward, but we'll see what's happening. Pool C is a little bit more convoluted right now. There's a lot going on in Pool C. Canada 1-0 right now. They're going to be playing the USA tonight. Colombia, Mexico 1-1. Great Britain 1-2, which we didn't really think Great Britain would be much of a factor there. They've had their moments too. They haven't played bad baseball by any stretch. They already got their win tonight, which was a surprise against Colombia. How do you think that shapes up?
So with Great Britain, they had the lead against the U.S., right? They started with that for a whole 20 minutes.
No, they did. You're right. They showed up.
But I don't want to talk about Great Britain baseball. They won their game against Colombia, which just makes the pool a mess, right? USA losing against Mexico and Colombia losing against Britain just makes it chaos, which is great. I love it. Give me more of those Pool A scenarios. But their uniforms, That's what really broke the internet. Can we talk about how they're the worst uniforms we've ever seen in the history?
The it's and I remember them talking about they were talking about Great Britain, they don't have the funding right now and all that. And I was just looking at their uniforms going, obviously not. They broke the internet for terrible reasons. I mean, look good, play good. They're not doing themselves any favor. Yeah, I didn't like that. They could have done a little better. I guess they were going for like classy or whatever. Throw some pinstripes on that bad boy. Something, right?
The font, like
I know. I know.
it's just so bad. But props to them for wearing those uniforms.
Yeah.
Well, they were the red ones, but yeah, those gray ones, it was just weird. But yeah, no, I think this group, and we talked about USA having the best lineup on paper. I still think they do, but their pitching was the problem, right? And it showed up. Mexico hit them a little bit when you have Nick Martinez starting game 2 of the World Baseball Classic, and then you got Brady Singer coming out of the bullpen, and your Team USA, that's not good enough.
It's not.
And they probably still gonna win the pool. I still have them win the pool. They have a game against Canada later tonight, which Canada went off game 1, but I'm more worried about USA moving forward. Like when you get to
right,
you can probably advance quarterfinals maybe because it's one game and they have the offense, but oh my God, it's the pitching is just not there. And we talk about the Miami and the electricity, and that was another thing that a lot of people were talking about, how the fan base wasn't the same. Obviously, it's still a home team, but
right.
a home game for them. But Mexico USA it felt like 50-50. The Mexicans were wild out there. Mexico, it looked like they were playing with more of a fire, and they came out on top. But we talk about Mexico being a good team. We probably did not think that we're going to beat USA. At least not me.
I mean, I did peak them as the sleeper.
You did.
But I didn't think they would beat them. No, yeah. A good point you're making is the USA has the offense, but it doesn't really matter it does matter how good your offense is, but even the best offense, if you're saying, hey, we're going to put you in a situation where you're down every game and you guys are going to come back because you're that good, that's a weird situation to be in. Because the other pitchers know that. They start pitching a contact, loud outs at a couple people, you start pressing. It doesn't really matter how good the offense is. You're in a tough spot. Now, they're definitely capable of coming back every game, but you don't want to be in that situation, no matter what, in my opinion. That's a very dicey situation.
Yeah, and I think, you also have to play strategy, right? Game 1 was against Great Britain. You have to look, and it's never good to say, but you sometimes have to look forward. For example, in the Puerto Rico game, which we'll probably talk a little bit about in just a second, how we talked about how, they were down big at first. They knew they weren't going to use Edwin Diaz for that game, right? They let Hector Santiago throw his 85-mile-an-hour fastball for a couple innings, get a few outs, get his innings, and sometimes that's what you got to do. You don't want to use the best pitchers when you're up so much or by a whole lot. Looking forward to USA, maybe they should have looked forward a little bit to Mexico. And they got, obviously Meneses went off. Randy Arozarena is probably the greatest clutch player of all time.
Well, he's got the boots on again. Did you see that? He's showing up with the cowboy boots, and he's just a different person. He steps up, and you feel like he's going to do something every time.
Every single time. It's unreal. It's unreal what this guy, did for Tampa in the postseason. That's what, I'm referring to. But oh my God, he's so clutch. He just hits baseball. He's just so hard when it matters the most.
He loves the lights. He loves the lights. So in this one, as of right now, because this is ongoing, I got USA and Mexico advancing. Now, I know you said you expect USA to still win the group. Who do you have joining them?
Yeah, I think so. Mexico losing to Colombia was huge. It was obviously a little bit of a surprise, but we talked about in the previous episode how Colombia, this is what they do, right? They surprised us in the last World Baseball Classic. They
Right.
weren't surprised. They brought in that Suniga guy out of the bullpen in the ninth and 10th, and he was throwing 102 by you. And you had Alex Verdugo
Yep.
going, wow. They got some nice pieces there. I don't know if Canada will be able to. Like, I like what I saw from them,
They
but
look good.
I still think Mexico, probably the winner of Mexico Canada might be that second team, but I'll go
Yeah.
Mexico as well. I think, it was good to see them bounce back after losing to Colombia. And they had chances at winning that game. They didn't. And that could have gone the other way. Like, they could have
Oh yeah.
lost 12-1 to US via mercy rule. And they actually fought back or came back and just, obviously we know what happened against the USA. So I'll go Mexico as well.
I also think, and because like you said, you got to look ahead a little bit. Looking at it, Mexico has Canada and Great Britain remaining. So I see them very easily getting to 3-1. Colombia has to play the US in a game the US is going to have to win. Tough game to win. Not a walk in the park for the USA either, but I think Mexico has the easier road there as well.
Yeah.
Very interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Pool D, just as interesting. A lot of drama, a lot of fireworks. Setting up for a big Puerto Rico DR game to advance. Obviously, Venezuela's off to a hot start, 2-0. Nicaragua, we've said they've played some good baseball, but they're sitting at 0-3, which I guess is kind of what we expected. Maybe that game between them and Israel, I think we said would decide which of them got to win. But it's looking like Venezuela's going to advance right now, and it's going to come down to the Dominican Republic and your very own Puerto Rico. Yeyo, how are you feeling?
So I'm feeling well right now because I'm looking at the score and Puerto Rico is up 6-0 against Israel. 6-0 in the second. I like that part. On our preview, on our World Baseball Classic preview show, I said that Puerto Rico not having Carlos Correa was a big loss, and it's hurting them, and it hurts them. Obviously, their pitching is not as good. I also said how, Acuna, which has been awful so far, but he's still there for Venezuela. He already had a walk against us and a hit. Sometimes that's all you need to get going. Venezuela is absolutely stacked. Obviously, we were all kind of shocked or a little bit surprised that they beat the DR. I'm more surprised at the way that they beat the DR. The fact that the Dominicans scored only one run. It was in the first inning, and that was it. Martin Perez became Tom Glavine. And then Luis Garcia and the Astros.
Electric.
He's throwing frisbees out there. But DR and Puerto Rico, DR should win that game. And it hurts me to say, but again, we've seen a lot of surprises,
Yes.
and I'll take another surprise if Puerto Rico beats the DR right now. They're feeling good. Obviously, bouncing back, facing Israel, they're hitting the wall right now. It's not the DR, I understand, but you want to go in feeling good. You don't want to. I like that their game against Venezuela, they still had another game, number one, and they're gonna have a day off. So that's gonna be an advantage. Every arm is gonna be available against the DR. We're gonna need every arm.
You're gonna need all of them.
You're gonna
Yes.
need all of them. And they're hopefully they can close this out, and they can, they'll be coming off of a win, which you want to feel good going into that game because that's the biggest game. The crowd is going to be unreal. Like every baseball fan, casual, diehard, should be watching that game.
100%. So for me, not having really a dog in the fight there, I mean, I picked Puerto Rico to advance. I'm rooting for Puerto Rico, but that feels like one of the first big, just premier games of this WBC. I mean, USA Mexico was one of them, but it kind of turned into a blowout. I mean, the USA almost got run ruled. DR Puerto Rico in Miami to advance is going to be absolutely incredible. And like you said, Puerto Rico is going to have all the arms available. And I think that's important, not just in the sense of, oh, you want everyone available, but they can go to the bullpen early. You know what I mean? If someone doesn't have it, you don't have to hope that he figures it out. Just go. Try the next guy. He's not working out. Try the next guy, because you cannot fall behind, in a big hole against the DR, especially with Puerto Rico, where their lineup is not looking, as big and dominant as we had hoped. But that's going to be really, really interesting. Let's give our predictions. I think obviously Venezuela right now is looking like they've kind of sealed a spot going forward. We don't want to say that too early. I'll stick with Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I made them as a pick to advance. They're in the running. I'm not going to give up on them. I think Venezuela, Puerto Rico advance, and it's going to be a big shock that the DR doesn't make it out of round one. What do you think?
I hope you're right.
You love what I
I
just said.
love, but I'm sticking with what I picked. Right, I picked
Yep.
Venezuela and DR, and I think they're just the better teams. When you look at this pool, we knew that there were three big horses, right, and it was DR, Venezuela, and Puerto Rico. Like for me, it was in that order. Puerto Rico doesn't have the pitching. Like we don't even know who's going to start against the DR because like right now Jose de Leon is starting against Israel. Stroman is not going to be able to start. Berrios got lit up. So we may
Yeah.
even go with an opener, right? At this point, we may even go with an opener. I got the DR. I do think that if it's one of those, just don't let us hang around. Like if it's a
Ooh.
3-2 game, 4-3 game, something like that, where there's like I'm gonna get my hopes high up, and then it's I hope we
Don't
just
let
pull
the
it off.
crowd get into it. Don't
But
let the crowd come
well,
alive.
but that's the thing. It's gonna be close to 50-50, Dominican and Puerto
Yeah,
Rico.
it's true.
It's gonna
It's
be
true.
electric. And this
But
this is
that's
a rivalry that goes back decades, you know?
but this is still one of those where it will be close to 50-50. I think maybe a little more Puerto Rican fans there. But it is one of those where everyone knows Puerto Rico's the underdog. And I think if it's the fifth, sixth inning and it's a close game, they will have a little more nervous energy, and you guys will have a little bit more of the here we go.
You
You
think
know,
they'll feel the pressure. They'll feel the
yes,
pressure of
that underdog momentum. And man, I'm excited for that game.
yeah.
I'm really excited.
I'm very excited.
Before we wrap it up here, and we're not going to go into this too much because we haven't filled out the whole bracket, but we have two of the quarterfinals already decided here because of Pool A and Pool B being completed. So quarterfinal one is going to be Australia, Cuba. Quarterfinal two is going to be Italy, Japan. What are your quick thoughts on that, Yayo? Quarterfinal one, Cuba versus Australia. Who do you think is going to take that one?
Um, I I gotta go Cuba. I think they've won obviously two in a row. Even though Australia went 3-1, their only loss was to Japan.
Yep.
Maybe they got something going on there. I still think somehow Cuba finds a way and just sneaks by Australia. We heard about some young arms that they've had that Cuba had throwing 100, and they're pitching, and you need pitching in this kinds of tournament. You're gonna need pitching. So I think they do have that, and still got a couple major leaguers. Maybe now they're feeling good. You saw kind of like a bounce in the step in their last game or two. So I think they ride that momentum and get a win there and move over to the semis.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bats woke up, which was the issue. Obviously, I mean, none of their pitchers really looked overmatched. Obviously, they weren't facing any vaunted lineups, but I don't really think they will be against Australia either. I think they need to just keep pitching the way they were. And they kind of leaned on, Yon Moncada, Luis Robert, the big league guys, some of the Cuban national team players, would just get on base and those guys would drive them in. I think they probably try and follow that formula, but I think they probably move on as well. Should be really interesting in Tokyo. And then the big game in Tokyo, Japan, Italy, quarterfinal two. It's going to be awesome just because it's in Japan. The crowd's going to be nuts. I think this is one of those where, for baseball's sake, I'd love to see Italy hang around, make this interesting. I don't really see it. I got to go with Japan there, but it would be very fun to see a tight game in Japan. How do you think that one plays out?
I got Japan as well. I mean, they're just stacked.
Yeah.
They're playing at home. If Italy wins this, it might be one of the biggest upsets we've ever seen.
Yes.
But this is for a pass at Miami and going to the semis. And I think, going back to the first semifinals, if Cuba wins, they're playing in Miami. And that can be electric for the Cubans. We know how the Cubans are there in Miami. But I got Japan winning. I don't know. I think they're just too strong. They're too deep. So I'll go Japan and Cuba on both of them. But let's talk a little bit about the Pool C and Pool D, right? So we picked. I think we both agree with USA and Mexico, right?
Yep.
So for you, that means the Pool C runner-up would be facing Venezuela, right? So it would be Mexico and Venezuela projected first semi,
Hmm.
and the other one, in your case, you have Puerto Rico facing the U.S. in the quarterfinals. So talk to me about those. What? Again, there's plenty of baseball left, especially in Pool
There's plenty
C.
of baseball left. So one of those is Puerto Rico, U.S. How does the other one shape out? It
We
was
had Venezuela and
Venezuela.
Mexico. That's a
So
good
Puerto Rico
one.
and U.S. would be incredible, and these are all in Miami as
Yeah.
well. I would love Puerto Rico and U.S. And that Venezuela game would be really fun as well. I mean, I almost feel like I'm getting ahead of myself here because
Yeah.
while we made those picks, and there's only a game or two left for each team, it feels like so much can happen, right? Like I'm still expecting the other shoe to drop with upsets and things like that. Um, I like all the teams right now that are left as far as going to Miami and being a great atmosphere
Yeah.
and being great
Oh
baseball.
yeah.
Because Japan, everyone loves to see Japan play. It's just one of those things. I don't even really know how to describe it or what's the reason, but they're a team that travels. I mean, their fans travel well, and even if their fans don't travel, everyone who likes baseball loves to watch them play. And then the rest of them are all South American, Caribbean teams, Cuba, unless Australia sneaks in, all those games are just powerhouse matchups. And I'll have to reevaluate when we get to that stage to make picks because I really don't know.
And
There's so much coming up.
and we will. And we will. It was just kind of like we went over the groups. This is how we think it's gonna
Yes,
shape up. So
that is.
mine would be DR and US because I have DR advancing, beating Puerto Rico. Obviously, we're looking ahead a little bit, but DR advancing a DR USA matchup in the quarterfinals.
Insane.
When the rosters came up, those were the two teams that we were looking at. Like, oh my God, this might be the greatest teams ever assembled, and they might
Yep.
face in the quarterfinals. Mm.
And the really interesting thing is I checked the odds before we did the show. And with everything that's happened, the odds have pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah.
They really haven't moved. So no one's really too rattled by, the DR being in a little bit of a weird spot right now. Puerto Rico, Mexico, the US. Everyone just kind of, or not everyone, but the odds makers just kind of think it's going to play out. The better teams are going to move on, just like how we said. And it'll be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, and I think that's usually the case in this tournament as well. Like the
Yep.
best teams are always there at the end, and I think that's what's gonna happen this year as well. Um, but I think that's it for me. How about you? You got anything you want to walk us off?
No, that's all I got. To be honest with you, I think the feel good story is and it just happened, so I can't even remember his name. I think it was Duque, the Nicaraguan pitcher
Yeah.
who pitched ninth inning, meaningless kind of situation against the DR, struck out three superstars, struck out Julio Rodriguez, Soto, I think was Devers the other guy,
Yep.
struck out the side and literally got signed like an hour later to the big league.
He was literally wearing his uniform still. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and I mean, man, that's awesome because obviously you're playing for your country and all that, but there's a lot of guys, like this kid who, I mean, maybe he was just a flash in the pan, but whatever. He got the contract now.
Yeah.
He's got a chance to show what he's got. So that just kind of wrapped up, week one in a little bit of a bow for me. But I'm excited to see the games tonight, the games going forward, and kind of see how this shapes out and check back in next week, see where we stand.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm nervous. I cannot wait to see, how all this unfolds. I'm going to be watching a lot of games. I love the fact that we had games from literally it felt like 6 a.m. all the way through 11, like 24 hours of baseball.
It's like NFL Sunday.
amazing.
Like you sit down and you don't get up till the end.
No
Yep.
reason to, no reason to. But we'll be back later we'll get back to obviously our predictions. AL Central is going to be up next. We're going to have a week 2 recap, and we're going to keep bringing you WBC content as it keeps moving forward closer to that championship game. Again, there's only about a week left in this tournament. It's going to move fast. So buckle up.
Yep.
Make sure you follow us on all social media. Baseball as intended, and Twitter is going to be BA_podcast. And I think that will do it for us this week, and we'll check you out on the next one.
See ya.